Hello, everyone. Welcome to part one of our special 21 Hats podcast year-end review. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week and next week, we take a look back at the conversations we had over the past year, highlighting some of our happiest, smartest, funniest, and most difficult exchanges. We discuss topics such as whether the Great Resignation prompted business owners to overreact and overpay employees, whether the anxiety of owning a business ever subsides, what young couples should ask themselves before one of them starts a business, why owners find marketing so difficult, how owners can sell a business that just won't sell, and what keeps entrepreneurs going when the going gets really tough. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. In fact, that's the whole idea behind the 21 Hats community, engaging with other owners to get the kinds of insights only a business owner can offer. If you're interested in learning more, step one is to sign up for the Morning Report newsletter, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners so you don't have to go looking for it. Step two is to get on our Slack channel, where you can ask questions, get vendor recommendations, and tap the wisdom of a very impressive crowd. Just search for the 21 Hats Morning Report to sign up for a free trial. There aren't many places where you can hear entrepreneurs talk about the real-life problems they are confronting right now, today, as they happen, with no guarantee of a happy ending. But those are the conversations I have every week with Sean Bussey of Kinesis, Paul Downs of Paul Downs Cabinet Makers, Jay Goltz of Artist Frame Service, Mel Gravely of Triversity Construction, Jennifer Karen of SB Expos and Events, Liz Picarazzi of City Bin, Jackie Russo of Brand Russo, Sarah Siegel of Siegel Communications, William Vanderblumen of Vanderblumen Search Group, and Laura Zander of Jimmy Bean's Wool. They come from a wide range of industries and geographies and experiences, but they all share a willingness to talk about not just what they get right, but what they've learned from getting stuff wrong. In this episode, we also highlight several special guests who stopped by in 2024 to discuss their journeys, including Matt Hoying of Choice One Engineering, Jill and Paul Choma of Gilded Moon Framing, and Jamie Echt of the Crafters Workshop. If listening to one of these highlights makes you want to go back and hear the full episode, just search 21 Hats Podcast along with the title of the episode you want to hear. You can also find a transcript of this episode at 21hats.com that has links to all of the episodes we sample. This episode is titled, This is What It Takes to Build a Business, Volume 3, Part 1. We'll be back next week with Part 2. The first highlight comes from the first episode of 2024, episode 179. New Year's resolution? Make some money. In which I asked Paul, Sean, and Laura about their hopes for the year and whether they'd made any resolutions. As usual, Paul got right to the point. What did you resolve, Paul?
I want to make a lot more money this year.
Seriously. Can I piggyback on yours?
Yeah, no, but the context was last year was a year when I knew I was going to be making a bunch of investments and didn't expect to show much or any of a profit, and I absolutely nailed that goal. And,
Congratulations.
And this year, now I want to see some payback on that, so I'm going to be concentrating more on cost cutting and efficiency and making sure that we're profitable all the way through.
Are you thinking about achieving that more by efficiency and cost cutting or by growth?
Growth. And the thing is that we did a bunch of sort of projects, expensive projects, and had one change to our basic fixed costs in 2023. The change was just that my rent went up because we renewed our lease and then took over another 15,000 square feet. So my rent bill went from about 11 grand a month to 23 grand a month.
Ooh.
Wow.
And that's a significant jump, but it's still much, much cheaper than trying to move into a different facility. So whatever the difference is there, let's say call that $130,000. And then we bought a new spray booth and put it into service, and that was about a $140,000 project. And then all the marketing and new website I did, let's call that $100,000. So whatever that is, almost $400,000. Now we're going to show an accrued loss of about $100,000. So we would have been in pretty good shape if I hadn't done those things. But those are the things I needed to do to get to the next level in the next few years.
In episode 181, have we been too generous with employees? Mel, Jackie, and William talked about how the balance of power has been shifting between employees and employers over the past few years, and specifically, whether some owners may have gone too far in terms of compensating employees during the labor shortage. Jackie, you raised an intriguing question. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I read into your question was this. We've been through this really interesting period, a challenging time with the pandemic, the Great Resignation, the labor shortage, which I'm not sure is completely over yet. But in trying to build a culture at a business through all of that, one that attracts and retains employees, how do you know if you've gone too far? Is that a fair reading of the question you were raising?
That is a very fair reading. And I would add to that, I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana. And so from a salary perspective, we skew lower than national averages, even state averages. And so, is it enough to meet the state average? Do I need to get all the way to the national average? Where is the line for fair and equitable these days? And how am I building the culture or being taken advantage of?
Is this primarily an issue of the pay, dollars, or is it all of the...
I think it's all of the above. We've always had a flexible schedule. From when we started in 2001, you could work from home, work from the office. And it's about being a mature adult and knowing what you needed and taking care of it. So there were very few rules around that. We moved into COVID, and so that became even more so. We've always had unlimited paid time off. And really, 23 years in, it's worked very well. I can think of one time when I felt like that was maybe a little bit taken advantage of. But so then coming through COVID, we've now added to that a 4-day work week, pretty impressive increases in pay, a paid professional development trainer who comes to us once a month, paid one-on-one coaching. And so I'm thinking, am I adding more stuff? Have I added too much? When do I know that I've reached the line?
Did something trigger this thought?
I think that I can attribute part of my success to the fact that I'm always asking the questions. Am I doing enough? How can I do more? Where's the right balance? And
but
so,
now it's, am I doing too much?
Right now, that is the question. Have I reached the sweet spot or have I gone too far past the sweet spot? So nothing's wrong. I just sat down and analyzed the numbers from last year, and everybody did their salary wishes. This is what I would love to be making. And I'm thinking, if I can afford it, do I push to it? If I can't afford it, do I find a way to push to it? Where's the line?
Interesting.
Mel, William, have either of you thought along these lines at all?
Oh, that's the tension I think everybody that I'm working with is facing. So I don't know if it's helpful or if it's discouraging, but I would say, Jackie, that you shouldn't feel alone. And I think particularly what we're seeing is, as we deal with the reality of hybrid is probably here to stay, some kind of remote work, and also the tension that there's a whole lot of productivity that happens with people in the office. I think the dilemma that I sense business owners facing is if I'm going to ask people to be in the office, it better be the best office ever. And it better be someplace people want to come. So they focus on building culture and they raise pay and then they put in a Ms. Pac-Man machine or whatever the thing is that makes people feel like it's fun. And then it's like, when is it too much? And I'm a huge proponent of millennials, Gen Z, and now Gen A. I just think I'm very bullish on our future with them. But there is that common perception that I've heard for years that, well, they're entitled. Now, maybe that's because they got a participation trophy for everything ever. They got titles way before they should have. But I do think it becomes a bit of a black hole. The more you feed this into the culture, here's something I'm entitled to, the more it becomes a problem. So, man, I wish I had the magic formula to tell you how to figure out how far is too far, but you are not alone. And that is the tension I hear a lot of leaders managing right now.
I love what you said about getting them back into the office. We just invested heavily into taking what was a pretty cool ad agency office vibe. We have both Ms. Pac-Man and Galaga. But we expanded it. And so we've built, our creative team was like, hey, we've done this open office vibe for, 2 decades now. We want rooms. We want our own offices. And so we built independent, individual, 10 offices, 11 offices, so that each of the graphic designers has their own space, but it's no ceiling. And so it is both still open and unique and individual. And so that seems to be making them want to be here. And so retention is my word, because I want to make sure we're retaining good people. We've got the greatest team we've ever had. How do I keep them happy? And I guess that's why I'm asking the question, what's far enough? What's too far? Where's middle?
The way I see this, because I think we lean in pretty hard toward people first as well, and retention is a big driver behind that. But it's also, we've got other things to our culture that we want to be intentional about. So it's not just to retain, it's to retain and to support collaboration. It's to retain and to support high performance. It's to retain and to support our inclusive environment. It's to retain and to support high levels of customer satisfaction. And so we try to get very specific about the why of the culture, not just good culture. So people say, I just want to have a good culture. Well, yeah, but let's define specifically what good is. And then to me, you take a long-term view like you would a portfolio of investments. So you named a bunch of things, and I would call that the portfolio. Pay, work conditions, office environment, flexibility, all that stuff, right? Paternity leave, maternity leave, all that stuff is the portfolio of stuff. And the question is, and I think this changes over time, which instruments in that portfolio are providing return? Because some of them don't matter. I'll give you an example. We've got a division in our business that they do not value long-term incentives at all.
Oh.
They just don't care about long-term incentive.
Totally agree with that.
So the portfolio, including long-term incentive for them, they're like, okay, I'll take it, but could you give me $2 more an hour? Because that's really what I care about. So figuring out and making sure you stay contemporary around your portfolio balancing. If you see it as a portfolio, then you can kind of manage it that way, and checking in regularly, employee engagement surveys. If your team's small enough, I just talk to them and find out in my one-on-ones, like what matters and what you're like, yeah, I'll take it, but I don't really care because it's all costing money.
Right.
And so I take away the things they don't care about and double down on the things they do care about.
In episode 183, I had to fire the guy. I talked to Paul, Jay, and Sarah about sexual harassment and where you draw the line with employees. Is it possible to define sexual harassment precisely? Does it require a zero-tolerance response? Or is it better to leave room for discretion and judgment? The conversation was sparked by a situation Jay experienced with a valued employee who had been with the company for almost 3 decades, having started at the age of 17. Jay, you recently had a stressful situation with an employee, a longtime employee, who got in trouble and forced you to make some difficult decisions. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Not much for his own privacy, but with me 29 years since he was 17 years old, and falls under the category of sexual harassment. And it was just a difficult situation, of which there's some lessons from this. Sexual harassment, if you think that it's not happening at your company, maybe it isn't, maybe it is. It's if you've got 30, 50, 100, I got 130 employees, it's a problem, and you can have all the training you want, which we do the training, but it's very difficult. And one of the worst phrases ever made in my mind, usually is zero tolerance, because it takes out judgment. And the fact is, things are not always black and white. Is it sexual harassment for someone to ask someone out for a date? Is it sexual harassment when they ask them twice? Is it sexual harassment when they close the door and they grab their arm? It's not black and white. And anyone who goes, well, people should speak up, I fully understand that, especially for a woman, it is very difficult to speak up. It's embarrassing. They're worried about getting in trouble. They're worried about losing their job. It's very complicated. And then they worry about, the manager is tight with the owner, so they're not going to do anything. At the end of the day, I had to fire the guy, and it was very sad. Very sad. Very sad.
You did the right thing. I mean, it's a hard thing, but you have to, as the owner, I mean, it all comes down to you. If you hadn't acted, then I think that the the risk of being held liable for something would have been too high.
That's part of it. Let me tell you the other part. What does this say to the rest of the employees? That's a problem. It's both with the risk with the one employee, but then you got to take a stand sometimes because everybody's watching this stuff and it's a problem. And I will also tell you that, which is all part of why we do this podcast. Did I sleep that night? Yeah, like I got to tell you, I'm a warrior. I've had to fire people for all kinds of reasons over the years. And like, it was a very sad moment with him and he was very upset, didn't argue with it. But if you're in business and you've got a lot of employees, you better just toughen up because this stuff happens. If it's not this, it's something else. And I haven't had one in many years that was personal like this where I knew the guy for a long time. But like, whatever, I do what I got to do and I'm not whining about it.
Jay, was it obvious to you that you had to take this action?
Here's why. This does make it black and white. This wasn't the first time. 10 years ago, there was something else. And that's why it wasn't that hard. Because it's like, okay, I'm big with second chances. I'm not big with third chances. And if it wouldn't have happened before, maybe the outcome would have been different. But this is the second round and like enough. Just, yeah.
Normally, if I have an employee who is misbehaving in some way, we have a procedure to tell them what the problem is, what the solution is, how we're going to help them. But they get a second chance in many cases.
Sure.
And I'm curious whether sexual harassment, sort of in a not like an obvious grabbing someone and whatever,
right,
but just a remark or something, whether that's something that it's okay to give that person a second chance, or are we in a world where you basically got to get rid of them immediately?
No. That's why I started out with this zero tolerant. I don't believe that phrase. I'm sure there's some cases. I think that phrase is overused. I don't think it's practical. If someone makes a bad comment, yes, I absolutely believe they get one warning. It's just not that complicated. You get one. People say stupid stuff. Men, women, it happens. But to your point, yeah, they grab. Okay, there's certainly some stuff that, yeah, that's it. I got to tell you, somebody calls someone a racial slur, that probably would be it. I don't know that that's a warrantable offense because I don't think you can undo the damage from that. So I'm not saying there aren't things that aren't zero tolerance, but not many.
In episode 184, That Would Put Me Out of Business, Mel and Jackie talk about how they handle requests for proposals. Mel does so carefully. Jackie won't touch them.
We left the RFP rat race about 10 or 15 years ago, and that really freed me up to not worry about what other people were charging. RFPs are designed to put apples next to apples, and it's a very price-centered approach to choosing an agency. And I think, again, that should be maybe the fifth consideration, because choosing an agency, you're dating and you're getting engaged and you're getting married, and you should not do that just because they're the cheapest available option on the corner. So it's a lot about trust. It's a lot about chemistry. It's a lot about expertise. And we want people who think those are more important than pricing. So then if there is a slight fluctuation between this price or that price, we're still going to get the gig. We used to go from being the least expensive company in the room and not winning to now, most of the time, being the most expensive company in the room and winning. And I like that version better.
Jackie, when you say you left the rat race of RFPs, does that mean that when somebody came to you with an RFP, you refused to play along?
I say things like, thank you so much for considering us. But at this time, which is for the past 15 years and will continue to be for the rest of my life, we don't participate in the request for proposal process. If you want to meet with us and have us do a discovery and put together a proposal, we're happy to do that. But I'm not filling out your RFP. I'm not playing your game. I believe that you already know who you want to hire, and I think you should go hire them. And don't waste my time so that you have somebody to say no to justify the decision of who you want to hire. I don't always say that last half, but I think it. And my creative team is happier. I am happier. We are happier. We have not participated in a single RFP in 15 years, and we won't under my watch.
Why do you assume that somebody who's doing an RFP process already knows who they want to hire?
because most of the people that I've talked to that have conducted RFP processes say, we really know we want to hire this agency, but we need to have 5 to justify the decision. I'm like, okay, good. Good luck. And sometimes they say it's me. We really want to hire you, but I'm like, we're not going to be a part of a decision by committee. We're not going to look as good on paper as we do when we get to actually have conversations and talk. So if we're just filling out this piece of paper and we're going to be judged apples to apples on the paper, what we're bringing to the table is not going to come through. I'm not doing spec work, and I'm actually pleasant. That makes me sound like I'm very unpleasant, but I'm very pleasant to work with. We've been able to sort of narrow down and figure out where we excel, and that's where we spend our time.
Mel, I'm guessing you do play the RFP game, am I right?
We do. In a select way, we will RFP if it is a qualifications to driven RFP. So we're not afraid of the pricing part, but there must be a qualifications part of it. So we don't hard bid. And hard bid would be basically, here are the drawings. We're a construction company. Here are the drawings. What's the price? That's a hard bid. We don't do that at all. Zero, none, because we don't want to be low, but we're not afraid of competing if price is a factor amongst others. So we do qualitative, including RFPs.
In episode 185, Managing Your Tasks, Your Credit Cards, and Your Anxiety, Jay, Jackie, and Sarah respond to a Reddit poster who asked whether the stress of owning a business ever subsides. The thought of a stress-free life brought a few chuckles from the owners. I saw an interesting post on the small business Reddit from a business owner who had a question that I think might be relevant to a lot of our listeners. I'm going to read it to you. It's titled, "When Does the Anxiety of a New Business Subside?" And this owner wrote, we're laughing already.
Yes.
"I started my business, Wilderness Guiding and Outfitting, last year, and things were very slow at first. December, got some business. January, a little more. I was hopeful. Word started to get out, but suddenly this past week, I have been flooded with requests via calls, emails, texts, forms submitted on my website, and it's absolutely amazing. I'm 100% not complaining. Just a week ago, I was stressed about if I could even pay my bills, but the sudden influx of customers and reservations has me feeling anxious and a little overwhelmed. I am so worried about a customer falling through the cracks as I navigate getting back to this person or that person, making this or that reservation for a trip or service. It's just that it was so sudden, as if everyone all at once decided they wanted to do a trip. I am a one-person show."
Well, that's an easy one. The answer is the anxiety stops at the 42-year mark. So
You're going to hire somebody, even if it's a freelancer.
Okay, lighten up. No, I think it's about managing customer expectations. That I think if whoever is emailing, texting, whatever, you say, I'm a one-man show. I return all correspondence between, and just let people know when you're going to get back to them. I think people are perfectly happy. Most will be happy with that. And just when he gets home at night, she gets home at night, you go ahead and get back. I'm always happy if they just tell me when I'm going to get the return. That's all. I just would like to know where it's at. I don't think there's anything embarrassing to tell someone I'm a one-man operation.
But you need to have a system in place also. Like if you're going to start, whether or not it's Todoist or something else, you need to get your person's name, put it in a spreadsheet. They came in, you responded, this is pending, what's the next step? And just making sure that you're organized on all of those things and updating that spreadsheet every day so you can keep on track of everybody. Because, the worst thing in the world is to get a Yelp review. Oh, I tried to go on this outdoor adventure, but they never got back to me. You want to avoid that. But, you could probably, if reservations keep coming in, hire a freelancer, somebody to help manage that. There are tons of folks that are perfectly capable of just helping, send out those emails. Thanks for your inquiry. We are a one-man show. We will get back to you within the next 7 days or whatever it is.
I think those phone answering services make sense too. I can't tell you how surprised I am when I call companies, and we're talking about things that cost thousands of dollars, and the phone machine just says, the person you're trying to call isn't here. They don't even put their name on it, for God's sake. So even if it just said, hi, this is Joe Schmo, leave your name and number. So I've learned that people, in my experience from being the customer, people are either really good at this or they're horrible at it. And there's no reason to be horrible at it. To your point, have a system, have a person answering the phone, or have something, but it's not brain surgery. And I'm surprised at how many companies just drop the ball on it.
I thought this one was interesting because it was so early in the process. I mean, as he acknowledges, this is one of the lucky ones. He started his business. It was slow for a couple of weeks, and then boom. That's a problem a lot of people would like to have.
I know. I want to know what the secret sauce is. How did this person do that? Like, tell me, and I will emulate it.
It starts with a website also.
And it's seasonal, so if you started in the beginning of the winter, then it's going to be slow. And now people are planning spring and summer trips. It's going to pick up.
I sensed he was asking a deeper question. It wasn't just about managing the sudden inflow. It was about adjusting to life as a business owner and recognizing that even if he figures out this situation, there's going to be more coming that he's going to have to live with.
Yeah, he's going to have to deal with the next step, which is he's going to have to learn about hiring and firing and management, which is not a simple thing. And it's a he.
I think it's a he.
Okay, if he wants to grow, this is, I deal with this in the framing business all the time. I just was at the show and I said to everyone, you have to make a decision. Do you really have the mindset, the stomach for growing a business, or do you want to be a one-person frame shop? There's nothing wrong with that if that's where you're comfortable, because he's going to have to make a decision. Does he want to grow this to have a staff and be a manager?
In episode 186, Can Jimmy Bean's Wool Sell Yarn on LinkedIn? Laura and Sean talk about Laura's unsuccessful efforts to move marketing off her plate and get others to do what she's always done. Part of what she had to learn is that marketing doesn't come as naturally to others as it does to her.
I've been told that I'm a marketer and that I'm good at that. And, I don't know. I have a hard time thinking that other people can't do it as well or do it a lot better than I have. So I've let go of that for the last few years and just thought she could take that on with the leader that she has. And I just don't think their skills are there. They don't have that same intuition. They don't think that same way. They don't think huge. They don't think about getting Hugh Jackman to do a video for them. And we haven't had that for a number of years. And I think it's just catching up to us.
Yeah.
And so that's where, I'm kind of stepping back in and okay, we got to think big. Going back to marketing 101, it's not just about marketing to our existing customers, which our team is really good at. It's about we have to grow. Literally our customers are dying off every year. We have an older customer base and we need to get new customers in, and we need to do it in a systematic way. And our team doesn't think that way.
Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest marketing. New customer acquisition is 100% the hardest marketing you can do.
Oh, it is?
So,
I love that.
100%.
Oh, I think it's so fun.
See, this is your unique gift. Anytime there's something where you think it's easy and everybody else thinks it's hard, it's that's the special thing, right? That's your unique gift.
Yeah, it's just door to door. I love going door to door.
Along those lines, when you described it before as your team kind of lost sight of marketing 101.
Yes.
I think along the lines of what Sean is saying, it really isn't marketing 101.
No, it's not.
You brought a unique brand of creativity to it. And just the example you gave of bringing in Hugh Jackman to be part of a campaign.
Yeah. Yep.
That's not marketing 101.
Yeah, it is. It's easy. But no, this is actually very enlightening and that is the mistake. The oversight that we made is that I assumed that stuff is just marketing 101. It's not that fucking complicated, it's not that hard. And so I let go of that, and my expectations then obviously are set at the wrong level. And I'm expecting other people to just be able to do that. And it doesn't come as naturally for them. And so we're having to reset and reorganize. And, then you figure out, do I find somebody who that is marketing 101 for, which is expensive, or do I, this goes back to Cliff Oxford.
But I don't think that's what you're looking for.
Well, that's what Cliff would always say. He's just you're never going to find somebody to replace you.
Who's Cliff Oxford? Sorry, I don't know Cliff.
Oh, Cliff was he was in a blogger for the New York Times. He's been friends with Lauren forever. and was a good mentor to me in a lot of ways. And he was a marketing genius, if you will. But yeah, he used to always just say, he's like, you're not going to find somebody else. Like, you are marketing. You are the marketing like person. And I resisted and have resisted and resisted. I'm like, I don't want to do it. It's too easy. It's boring. I want to do other stuff. But anyway, maybe the takeaway here is, and I love what you said, Sean, is that if I think something's easy and other people say it's hard, then maybe that is my unique gift. And that's something I need to lean into as opposed to trying to outsource or farm off. And then I get frustrated because I'm just like, dude, it's not that freaking hard.
In episode 187, man, I'm glad we didn't do an ESOP. Special guest Matt Hoying tells Sean and Jay how he chose to create a do-it-yourself employee ownership structure at Choice One Engineering in Ohio, rather than creating an ESOP. We start with Jay summarizing Matt's concerns about ESOPs.
Okay, so as someone who spent a lot of time looking into ESOPs, it seems to me that the issue is there's no question, I don't think, there is a tax advantage to ESOPs, but just correct me if I'm wrong. The reason why you gave up the tax advantage is because A, you like the fact that they have to pay money to get into it, which an ESOP isn't that. You like the fact that that not everybody is going to be invited into it. I assume you like the fact that you don't have the government in your place every day telling you what to do, because there's tons of regulations with ESOPs because it's a government-sponsored tax plan. So you don't have any of that now, I assume, right? Is that true?
That's correct, Jay. And you hit the big topics there, but that last one is one of the ones that I look back on and say, man, I'm glad we didn't do an ESOP, because we've changed our plan a couple times since 2014. Not having the control to be able to internally within our own ownership group decide what's best for our structure was something I just couldn't get past. Like, I'm going to have the government telling me what I can and cannot do with our business. That just never resonated with me.
Right, and to be fair to the government, I understand why they do it. It's just like 401k plan. They don't want somebody to be able to take this and manipulate it for the benefit of a few people. So I totally respect that the government's got their hands in it. Your plan is far more running the business in the most efficient and effective way. And by doing an ESOP, you lose some of the tools to do that. So I totally understand why it was worth giving up the tax advantages for that.
Yeah. And I looked at it as there's pros and cons, and ours isn't a perfect system by any means, right? But there's what was the way that we could best ensure the future of Choice One. And when I say the future of Choice One, I mean Choice One in the way we want Choice One to be. Could Choice One exist as an ESOP? Yes, absolutely. But there's lots of things we do that an ESOP wouldn't necessarily encourage or support.
Matt, I think I heard when you were talking about what this would mean for the future of the business, I think you may have been referring to another aspect of ESOPs, which is that you can't really control what a future generation of owners will do. They would have the option and maybe even the fiduciary responsibility to sell the business at some point. Was that a concern?
Yeah, that was probably the last piece of it that really turned me off of the ESOP, was that we wanted to be able to say we want to operate Choice One as we feel best for Choice One. And if that means continue on forever, or if that means, someday do we sell? I don't ever see that in the future that I'm involved in Choice One. But my concern was that if a very enticing offer financially was on the table and we were an ESOP, that we would have to consider that. And we like the ability to take those emails or phone calls that come in way too often and just say thanks, but no thanks.
In episode 189, What to Expect When You're Expecting a Business, Paul, Jennifer, and Liz respond to a small business subreddit post from a young woman who's about to marry a man who's about to birth a business and who's thinking about how they will balance the needs of the business with the needs of the marriage. We start with Jennifer warning against focusing on the best case scenario.
The person that asked the question is in the throes of excitement. They are about to get married. There's nothing more exciting than the engagement and honeymoon period. The fiance is also about to start a business. There's nothing more exciting than the thrill of starting on your own. Those two are a recipe for disaster for an honest conversation. The passion and excitement will meet the brick wall of reality pretty soon. And so what I would suggest to them is to talk to someone that has had a business fail and have an open, honest conversation. What I've heard people say is, oh, well, in a couple, I'll work now. I'm going to work really hard, but you'll have the day-to-day job with the health insurance. In a couple years, we'll be able to figure stuff out, and then we'll have enough money, and don't worry, we'll take the vacation then. Well, that's best case scenario. I want to hear worst case scenario. I want them to have a conversation. If you put all of your money, instead of, let's say you don't buy that house after the wedding, and you put that money in the business, and in 2 years from now, that business goes bankrupt, how are you going to feel about your spouse? Is your marriage going to be strong enough to survive it? What are you willing to do to keep that marriage alive? Don't think of best case scenario, because we all want to live in best case scenario. Think about the worst case scenario. So that's my advice. Liz?
Yeah, so when I started my business, I had kind of sketched it out. I had a business plan for it a couple of years before I left corporate. And part of that was that I wanted my husband to see that I was prepared to launch the business, that I wasn't just doing it impulsively. So he had a couple of years to see my passion for what I wanted to do and to see the business plan. So when the time came for me to be able to leave corporate, I had a severance, I had unemployment that I was able to get. At that point, he saw it as, this is your opportunity to go for it because we have this runway in front of us. So it was kind of an easier decision. If I had just decided to leave corporate to start a handyman company, which sounds insane, even now when I look back on it, he would definitely not have gone along with it. We probably didn't talk about worst case scenario, and I could have had that because my first business I ended up selling and getting out of very quickly. But there still was a messiness in closing that whole operation down that was definitely a strain on the marriage. There was still some money involved, even though I had sold it. And that was a really trying period. The lucky part of it was that the reason that I sold the first business was to focus on City and my current business, and that was doing well. So the conversation wasn't like, this thing shut down, what are you going to do now? It was, oh, it's a good thing you had this other thing going when the first one, imploded. And then current communications, as everyone knows, my husband, Frank, is my COO. So we talk continually about this. As we grow, the stakes definitely seem higher, taking on higher line of credit, buying inventory in a much larger quantity. That's always a big part of tension for us because he is risk averse. And I'm like, we need to prepare for success. Stop, having a mindset of preparing for failure, Frank. And that's probably a tension we're always going to have. But I think we understand why the other has that perspective more than we would have a couple of years ago.
Do you think it's a healthy tension that gets you into the right place?
I think so. Yeah. There's a lot of angst. There can be a lot of angst because you don't want to think that your spouse is preparing for failure. And if I really boil it down, when he's being risk averse, in my mind, I take it sort of personally and think that's what's going on. But it's really, he's just being protective of the life we have, the house that we have, which, yes, is mortgaged, against our big idle loan. But it's a big tension. And I have to say, it doesn't work for many, many couples, regardless of whether you work together. It's a very big area where a marriage can fall apart. And it is really important for this, person on Reddit to have their eyes open.
The second part of this woman's question is, what do couples where the spouse's business failed wish they would have done differently in terms of communicating with each other? Paul, happily your business did not fail, but you've been very open about how tough it was around the time of the Great Recession. You wrote about it in the New York Times. You wrote a book that was largely about it. Can you tell us anything about how you handled that in your marriage at the time?
Sure. One thing about my marriage is that all that was really bad, but it's not by any means the worst thing that's ever happened to me. So my wife and I have a very severely autistic son, and that's just a constant challenge. And we've been able to turn that challenge into something that binds us together. So the business failing was a distressing prospect, but, it wasn't, how can I explain this? It just never got to the point where it was actually the worst thing because it didn't fail. But we had, over the years, we've been together for a long time, we just settled into a pattern of how to be married that didn't require, how to put this, it didn't require any continuing assurance on my part that the business was going to be this or that. And part of that is because it started as just an effort to be a reasonably successful artisan. And it quickly grew beyond that. But Nancy's roots and my roots in business are very humble. And she just was not so worried about, or at least I didn't feel that she was worried about a moment where income was down or whatever, because A, she grew up in a household where that happened a bunch of times, and B, we'd had a lot of years prior to them when I was starting the business where just really didn't make much money, and we just got used to not having money. So I think that it was tough to explain to her every little in and out of what was happening in the business, and I just didn't do it. But we skirted disaster, so I never really had to confront the consequences of whatever I was doing at the time.
Paul, you and I met because you sent me an email when I was at the New York Times saying that you would like to write for the small business blog that I was editing, and you thought you could provide a different perspective because you were running a business that was headed toward bankruptcy. At the time you wrote that email to me, did Nancy know that you felt you were headed toward bankruptcy?
I don't know. I didn't explicitly say to her that way. At the time I wrote that email, which was mid-December of 2009, we'd already been through a pretty tough year. She knew it was bad, but she's not somebody who can really listen to the minute by minute, oh, here's how much money we have in the bank account. And I think that that's partially because, as I said, she grew up in a household where there were some pretty lean periods, and it would just be distressing for her. And the other thing is, when you have a child with special needs, one of the things you learn is that something happened to you, right? It just happened, and then you deal with it. And so with the impending bankruptcy, I could see it coming, but at the end of the day, it did not happen. So we never really had to get down and deal with it as the biggest problem of the moment, because we just got out of it. And it just made it possible for me in my marriage to get through that without having that frank conversation. Now, that's my experience, my wife, my situation, and I would never hold that out as, hey, if your business is failing, you should do what Paul did. Don't do what I did. I'm not a good role model in this case. So I think you should ask the other podcasters.
A couple of specific questions to give this person some really specific feedback. One is, if the company fails, who's responsible to pay back if there's any debt? Is this an assumption that the marital couple will do it together, or that the person who had the business, it's their responsibility? Second is, how soon after it fails is the expectation that that person who's a business owner would get a job, right? And not necessarily, I don't mean like a employment, but to bring in other cash. Whether that just means taking catering gigs on the weekend to bring in cash. What's that expectation of a time period? Is it a month? Is it 2 years until they get their feet on the ground to start a new business? Everybody's different. 3 is expectations of changes in lifestyle. Most businesses that fail at this level, your lifestyle is probably going to change dramatically. Are you on the same path of, well, we still need to take that luxury vacation on the cruise, or do we need to cancel it? And then the final one I would say is, where's the health insurance coming from? If the health insurance is from the spouse that's not the business owner, and they had expectations to do something of themselves, another job, staying with children, right? There's all sorts of reasons, is to relook at that, because health insurance is a serious aspect in the marital side when a person wants to start a company, and who's going to provide that.
In episode 195, Yeah, I Can Hold Myself Accountable, Mel tells Jay and Liz that as he was moving into an executive chairman role at his main business, Triversity Construction, he decided to buy a small business that he'd always thought had a lot of potential. Things didn't work out the way he expected, mostly because Mel didn't realize that the company he bought was literally losing money on every sale. Did you buy this business as something that you expect to really focus on now that you kicked yourself upstairs from your main business?
Actually, I bought it because I always loved this business. I was hoping that I could convince Triversity, the company that I was exiting, to over time see the value in it and add it to its portfolio of companies that it owns. So that was the motivation, right? They were not buying in. And so I decided to buy it myself and convince them over time that it was a good idea.
It's a construction related business?
Yeah, it's facilities management. So it's the grunt work plus. So, little patches of drywall all the way down to mowing grass and moving snow and cleaning out gutters and cleaning windows. It's the ultimate execution business. But companies, good companies during even bad times, they're going to maintain their facilities well.
Yep.
And so to me, it was an offset to the economic kind of trends of construction that construction can lead itself into. But it is a tough business. And I didn't buy, the company I bought was, I misdiagnosed their challenges. And now I'm in a situation where now I understand the challenges and they're tough ones.
How many employees are there altogether?
In Triversity or the new company?
No, everything under your purview.
150 people, maybe total.
And the new company, are you managing it on a day-to-day basis?
No, there's a president in place. That just is, if he would have come along, if I had 5 years, he'd be great, but I don't have 5 years. He's got to giddy up a little faster. He's bright. He knows this business super well. But, and so I would have to say he's managing the day to day, but I'm very involved, Lauren. I'm very involved and I'm not used to being very involved. So it's a challenge.
Can you give us a sense what the main challenges are? Why is it a tough business?
Yeah, the fundamentals is this company, when I bought it, had one customer. So that to me is not a problem because they had an amazing customer, a very large customer for this kind of business. And we were performing very well for them. So I was confident that our ability to perform was going to be a base for us to be able to grow this business. What I misdiagnosed, I thought they had a management problem, but they had a structural contractual problem with the customer. That is just, we were actually paying the customer to show up every day. And the team just didn't know it. I'd never seen negative gross margin before, literally never seen negative gross margin. And when I saw it, I just knew it was a mistake. So that's the biggest challenge. So the good news is that it's a great customer. We're working through new contract terms, new bill rates that I will put it back to profitability. But, when you dig a hole as deep as we dug it, just makes it a challenge. The second thing about this business, it is very cash intensive. When you deal business with big customers, 90 days are good terms. And so you're paying weekly because that's the kind of employees you have, and you're getting paid in 120 days. So the cash that it can consume is significant. So you add the cash that it consumes to lack of profitability, and it becomes very difficult.
Wait. Why? You see, this is what's interesting about this podcast. We're very different. Everything you've been saying up till now is like, yeah, that ain't me. I mean, we're like on opposite ends of the spectrum. You've got a bunch of partners. I have no partners. You've got one customer. I've got 40,000 customers. You finally hit on something. Okay, I got my arms on this one. What's with 120 days? Why do you have to wait 100? What if you say to them, you need to start paying quicker? Why do you have to live with 120 day payment terms?
Yeah, that's a great question. You don't have to, but you do have to if you do business with them.
So you think this particular customer, if you say we can no longer finance this at 120, do you think they'll find someone else that'll do it for 120 days?
I guarantee it.
Wow.
Now, here's the nice thing. If you're smart, though, and you're profitable, You just build a carry into your business model.
Yeah.
And but you got to build a carry into your business model. And if you don't, then you're going to be really hurting. Our Triversity, the construction company, does business with the same customer. We've never had a problem with 120 days. We have some problems with our subs that can't wait that long, but we've never had a problem with 120 days because we've built it into our business model.
Are you looking for other customers?
No. Well, here's why. I've got to make sure that I can cash flow a new customer. The worst thing I could do today is get a new customer.
I see.
The customer would have to pay me up front, right? And at scale, those are hard to come by. When we get this model straight, though, I'm confident, and I've told the customer and I are very clear about this. We can get back to 120 days. We can continue to deliver at the A+ level that we've been delivering. And then we can start to add customers.
You say you have negative gross margins. I assume you've got to charge more, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so my question is, they going to find someone else that if you raise your prices to where they need to be, are they going to find someone else who's going to go ahead and do it cheaper because they don't know the difference? Is that a question mark, or is that?
It's not a question for me at all, because we've been very clear. Please do find someone else that could do it at this price, and they can have it. When you get super clear, the customer gets super clear too. And they've been great, because what I said is, I'm going to show you everything, all the costs. And you tell me that you're paying for what you're getting. Now, they never admit it. We're not paying for something that we're getting. What they did say is, we're willing to talk to you about the rates. So, they've been great about it, to be honest with you. But, it's not their job to make sure I'm profitable. They want me to be profitable. It's not their job.
So, interesting business question to me is, the people that you bought this from, I'm going to guess they didn't have the proper accounting people in place to recognize that they were doing a negative gross profit. Is that true?
That is correct.
It comes down to accounting.
It does. And an idiot that would buy it without believing the pro forma, because this company did not have the model change. So I'm going to try to keep it short. This company did not have financials when I bought it. It didn't even have employees when I bought it. The two owners prior to me were loaning employees to this business and charging the business 10% margin for the cost of carrying those people. So they had no purview into what it was actually costing the company to do this, because they didn't care, because they were both getting 10% on all their employees. Where they did care was they couldn't seem to cash flow, and they couldn't figure. That's where I misdiagnosed. I thought they just had a bad model and that they weren't managing it well. It was worse. They had a bad model. They weren't managing it well, and they had no idea what it cost to deliver the service.
In episode 196, How to Waste Money on Marketing, Sean, Jackie, and William talk about the many reasons marketing can be so challenging for business owners. It all starts, Jackie says, with the marketing industry's refusal to set standards.
So I hear from companies all the time this frustration that agency XYZ, we paid them all this money and we got nothing for it. And now we don't have money for you. And we think you're going to do actually a really good job. And now we're sad we wasted the money. Okay. So sure, maybe part of it's just a thing to get up saying yes to us, but they could just say no. But as I dig into it and I see what XYZ agency did, they're right. They did get paid a ton of money and very little was done. And then I look a little deeper and, the client should have been smarter. There were some red flags. They should have maybe not hired XYZ, but here we are. And so I think in so many situations, and Sean, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, we do it to ourselves as an industry. Anybody can call themselves an ad agency or creative agency or communications firm or PR company or whatever you want to call it these days. Anybody can open their Mac laptop and have a Canva account, and now they're a designer. We have not done any licensing or certification or educational requirements or testing or ongoing continuing education. And I look around and literally I can't find another industry that treats themselves so badly. A plumber, electrician, architect, CPA, realtor, hairdresser, nail salon tech. Everybody else has some semblance of something to say, I am a legit entity. except our industry. And I don't get it.
Yeah. Oh man. That's such a good point, Jackie. I was on a call the other day with a company that had 300 employees. Let's just call them an engineering firm. And they had just fired their entire marketing department. And I was just sort of digging in, and I realized like their marketing team had built this like Byzantine spider web of digital marketing that no one could understand. Mm-hmm. And I was digging into it. And what I realized, Jackie, is that the level of complexity that has become the marketing and advertising industry is way higher than people's perception of its complexity.
Correct.
You know, like this owner of this company, which is in the tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, he has no idea really. And he's a pretty smart guy, right? He has no idea, say, the difference between, you know, an SEO strategy and maybe account-based marketing, or, you know, thought leadership and all the different ways that plays out and what is a relevant social media strategy. And what I realized in that moment is that in our career, you know, I think we have probably a similar career trajectory, Jackie, right? Back in the day when you and I were operating, you know, early in our careers, like you didn't actually have to track that much, you know, like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 channels, you know, in terms of how the message might get to the customer. And then you could just focus on being creative. And today, marketing is everything from super, super highly technical, tracking users and their digital behavior to, actually being really creative and innovative and brand and all places in between. And I really think that the business world just fails to comprehend how complex it is. And then as an industry, we've done ourselves a terrible disservice by actually not creating some standards in education. And so it's a freaking Wild West. And no wonder, I mean, Lauren, you've said this before, like it is the one topic where there's massive confusion and frustration of all the aspects of running a business. There's so little clarity on what to do with marketing. Why is that?
I have said that, Sean, and I've focused on it from the perspective of business owners who just struggle with figuring out where to send their marketing dollars, who to hire, what channels to use. It hadn't really occurred to me that it could be frustrating from the other side of the table as well, which is one of the reasons it intrigued me when you brought this up, Jackie. Have you spoken to other agencies? Have you mentioned you get on your soapbox when you can? Have you gotten anybody to salute?
I mean, everybody. Whether it's local agencies, agencies that we partner with on clients. We may share a client, each filling a different role. I'm an AMA member. I brought it up to them. AdFed. It's sort of this third rail that nobody wants to touch. And I never want it to sound like I'm saying, I'm inside now, so I want to close the door behind me and not let anyone else in. That is, please don't hear that. What I want to do is, let's just go with a naming protocol. The reason why the company in Sean's example had all these people doing all these things is because there's no protocols in place. I think about architecture. What would it be like if every architect was self-taught and maybe they had a degree, maybe they don't, maybe they went to 2-year, maybe they went to 4-year, maybe they worked at other companies for years, or maybe they just learned some stuff in their mom's basement and watched some YouTube videos. And now they're out there selling their architecture. We would never allow that. Why would we not allow it? It's a hazard. They could build something that could fall down. It's an incredible expense. It's safety. How is this any different?
William, is this confirming your worst impressions of the marketing industry?
Oh my gosh, just listened to this podcast 2 weeks ago. We're rewiring our whole marketing thing, trying to figure the SEO thing out, among other things. And it's deep, dark magic, man. It's not Don Draper coming up with a good idea. I'm just learning how much tactical strategy is in place and then also intuitive. I think this is right. And I should have hired you guys. Come help me figure it out.
Yeah, well, call me. We'll talk.
In episode 197, How to Sell a Business That Won't Sell, we discuss what we're calling a WESOP. The term, coined by Jay, refers to a business transaction that is something of a do-it-yourself ESOP, but without the expense and complication and debt of a full ESOP. It's a transition that lets owners get money out of what has been their life's work. It lets loyal employees, who may not have the money to buy the business right away, keep their jobs and preserve the company's culture and, eventually, buy the business. And it's a potential solution for the silver tsunami of retiring baby boomers because it can provide a sales path even for owners who have never managed to extricate themselves from their day-to-day operations. In this episode, Jay introduces us to Jill and Paul Choma, co-owners of a business, Gilded Moon Framing, that Jay recently guided through the WESOP process.
I realized that when you sell a small business, you usually get, in general, unless you're a computer business, I don't think anyone would argue with this, you get 3.5, 4 times EBITDA, or, which is very similar to profit. Okay, so I realized, boy, if you could just hold on to the company for a couple more years, if you've got that luxury, you could get some of your money out just by holding on to it.
Jay, I think you need to explain that. You could get some of your money out just by holding on to it.
For instance, if you own a business and you sell it, let's just say you get 4 times earnings. Okay, well, if you could get someone to run the business and you could go on vacation for 4 years and keep it going for 4 more years, you've got the earnings. You basically got your money out, which is why I threw it.
It's like a sale price. You still own it,
right?
But you're not there every day, and you collect the profit, and that's the sale price.
I said to Paul and Jill, can you sell it to your employees? And they said, we'd love to, but they don't have any money. And I looked into an SBA loan, and that's when the light bulb clicked on. And I said, you know what? It's hard enough to take a civilian and turn him into a business person. Like, that takes some work. But it's really hard to take somebody that's a civilian and turn them into an entrepreneur, because that's the whole definition of entrepreneurs, taking risk. If they went out and got an SBA loan for hundreds of thousands of dollars, I've seen this happen. They're going to be real nervous. They're going to go to Thanksgiving dinner. They're going to tell their Uncle Bob, and Uncle Bob's going to go, oh, no, you can't do that. Remember what happened to my friend so-and-so? People are going to freak out. We don't need to do that. So that's when I came up with, I'm calling it a WESOP. It's very similar. You sell it to the employee, except you stay around for a couple, maybe 3 years, and you give them a little raise. Maybe you put that money on the side. And then after 2 or 3 years, you've already gotten most of your money out, like I said, because you're still getting the profits. And then you can sell it to them, and there's no bank loan. There's no SBA loan. No one's got the risk. And then after 2 or 3 years, maybe it doesn't work for them. Maybe they decided they don't want to do this. Maybe they got divorced. Maybe their mother left them $300 million. There's lots of reasons. You're still okay because you still own it and you don't have any lawsuits. So I proposed that, and they made it work.
Yeah, it was genius. It really worked out well for us.
So tell us about the reaction of your 2 key employees when you threw the WESOP idea at them. What did they think?
They're very smart young women, and I think it took them slightly by surprise that they hadn't considered it. But once we kind of laid out a roadmap on what we were thinking and let them have some time to talk amongst themselves. I know one of them is married, and she spoke with her husband, and his comment was, this is a gift, because we did give them a very attractive price. When we bought our building, we had, as Paul said, it was a gift to us because it was such a good price. We figured, okay, let's pay it forward and let's give these guys a gift because they're smart young women. They're creative, and they'll be able to take this business and run with it and take it into the next decade and beyond. So once they spoke about it and came back to us and said, yes, we're interested, then it became time to really put a plan together. And we worked out a deal with them where we would hold the note and they would pay us for the sale of the business. We charged them a fair amount, but it was a lot less than what we were asking through the broker.
Wait, you got to qualify that, which you could do because you're getting the income for the next couple of years. So you didn't need to get 4 times earnings. All you needed to get was 2 times earnings because you got 2 more years out of it, and they were running it. That's the key to the whole thing. You didn't lose, and this was a win-win. If there's ever been a win-win in the world, this is a win-win. Everybody came out great.
In episode 199, I decided to slow our growth. Jennifer called in from Spain, where she was finishing up her first real vacation since starting her business almost 20 years ago. The vacation, Jennifer told Sean and Jay, is part of a decision she made to regroup a bit, in part by backing off on her sales and marketing outreach. The goal was to give her team and herself a bit of a respite while they catch their breath and while Jennifer institutes processes that will improve operations and get some day-to-day responsibilities off her own plate. I asked Jennifer how much she'd kept in touch with her office during the more than 2 weeks she was away.
I would say the first 10 days, not at all. Not at all. I made one person who was basically my second in command. Anything that was an emergency could go to her and she could text me. She didn't at all. And then we actually had an event here from a client in Barcelona the last 4 days. So I stopped in to see them, but no issues whatsoever. It's been fantastic. The only thing I had to do, which I got to figure out how to get off my plate, is I had to run payroll twice. But other than that, I didn't have to work.
Do you run the payroll because you don't want everybody, there's no way you would be comfortable knowing what everyone else makes? Is that one of the issues?
Yes, Jay. And I think this is purely, I have a person now who does finances and she's like, Jen, you got to learn to trust somebody to do payroll. It's exactly that, Jay. It's the last thing I'm holding on to as a CEO. Everything else I've sort of given up.
But it's not irrational. It is a potential problem if somebody knows what, you're not necessarily wrong. You got to be careful who you give that to, because that is information that somebody go, oh, I can't believe she makes more than I do. I've been here longer.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that simple.
Yes.
It really isn't that simple.
Compensation is something that is not just skill set, not just experience. It's what the market value is for that skill set. For us, how many times do you travel? If you only travel 5% versus 25%, right? There's so many variables with compensation, and I'm just not ready to give it up yet.
And you're assuming that the word would spread?
I know. And maybe it wouldn't, Lauren. I don't know.
You're not necessarily wrong. Listen, when you actually grow and you have a CFO or a controller that makes more money, okay, that's not a problem because they're making more money. But when you've got someone on there who is not necessarily making more money than the other people, and they might think it's tricky. I don't blame you for being hesitant to give that up.
And it's a different culture. You know, people under 30 are much more likely to share their salaries than.
That's what I was going to say. They all may already know.
Some of them do, yes, definitely under 30. They've shared it. I don't know if the people between 40 and 60 have shared it with the under 30s, right? And giving up. I don't know. It's the last vestige of me holding on that I think in probably less than a year I'll be ready to let it go.
Sean, did you worry about that at all? Was it hard for you to let that go?
No.
That was quick.
Yeah. I mean, 2008 was a really big reset for my company, kind of forced upon me by the, recession. And I made a lot of really big decisions that were made easier because I kind of had nothing to lose. And so when you're in that kind of mind space, I think it's liberating. And so one of the things I decided to do was to remove all the low value activities from my life and also outsource as much as possible. So it helped in that we outsourced things like payroll, which eliminated some of that friction back in that time. And then since then, we've gone to, open book management. And I've talked at quite length at this, in terms of my belief on compensation philosophy and making it far more transparent to eliminate a lot of those hidden frictions and kind of backdoor conversations that are bad for culture. So for me, it's been very liberating to not be focused on that for, 14 years or so. But that's part of my just sort of ethos and mindset of, A, not wanting to work on things that are low value, and B, eliminating things that are potentially troublesome for the culture. So that's just been my approach. And I know that doesn't work for every business.
No, Sean, I hear you. And I'm very open book transparent about the books of the company, the financial aspects of the revenue and profit and stuff. But the last vestige, again, I know it's just sort of holding on to me. It's controlling me rather than me controlling it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it, which I fixed, but part of that is because when we grew so fast, we had legacy employees that I had to figure out how to catch up to new employees with the salaries. And so that was hard. Now I fixed it. I fixed it across. But I need to get to your mindset of transparency where I can justify. I don't want to be like the government, right? Like step 1, you get this increase, whatever. But to add the compensation to a higher level of transparency and to let go of it, you're at the higher level plane of consciousness that I aspire to, Sean.
Well, I should caveat this, that the development you're talking about took place more recently. So, we did, just like you, we went from closed book financials to open company financials. And then the second phase was to move to a more deliberate, transparent compensation program. That transformation happened, I think, starting around 2018. So it took a little while to get there, too. So in many ways, I think you're on the same track that I was on. And I will say, for me, at least in my experience, it was so liberating, especially in the hiring process, because we have absolutely eliminated negotiation as part of the hiring process.
In episode 201, This Is Not How This Ends, we published one of our entrepreneurial fishbowl brainstorming sessions facilitated by Chris Hutchinson of the Trebuchet Group. In this one, we tried to offer ideas to support Jamie Echt, founder and CEO of the Crafters Workshop. As Jamie made clear, her challenges are real. Her sales are down, her customers are aging, her lease is ending, and she really wasn't sure what to do next. But summoning the grit that made her an entrepreneur in the first place, she knew she wasn't ready to give up.
Jamie, I just wanted to ask you, you've told us you've been doing this for a while now. You've obviously had some ups and downs. Could you just give us a sense of where your head's at? Are you excited? Are you eager to try to rethink aspects of the business? Are you feeling burned out? What are you feeling?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I'm in my mid-50s and I am not burnt out. I certainly know what that feels like. This is not that. I feel like I am baffled and perplexed. When I'm kept up at night, it's because I'm trying to think my way through this. And I probably didn't to say forcefully enough. I mean, I'm at the point where I am using my savings, my line of credit. I am no longer bringing in the dollars that support my monthly nut. And we are very, very scrappy. There's not a whole lot of fat here. So for me to get to that point is very worrisome. When I talked to my employees about this, and I said, this is where we are. And I said, tell me how you feel about this. And they were like, we're not ready to see this go. That would be sad after all these years of working towards this. So they are also energized to make this happen. So I'm a planner and I believe in playing the long game. So this is not how this ends. We've been through 9/11. We've been through 2008. I've been through a divorce, a cancer scare with my daughter. I mean, a lot of stuff. They're all with my business and all with the people here. This is not how this ends, but I do need some help thinking my way through it.
And that's the end of part 1. Next week, we'll be back with highlights from the second half of 2024. In the meantime, my thanks to everyone who participated in the 21 Hats podcast and the 21 Hats community this year, including our amazing producer, Jess Stuberon of Blank Word. Happy holidays, everybody.